I was 34 years old, sitting in my car in a Trader Joe's parking lot, eating a turkey sandwich alone on my lunch break, when my mom called me crying. Not sad crying, not the kind where something happened and she needed comfort. Ugly crying. The kind where she kept stopping mid-sentence because she couldn't breathe right. The kind where you can hear someone's whole world shifting underneath them in real time. And my first thought, and I want to be honest here because this whole thing is about being honest, my first thought was, not "oh no" or "what happened," or even "are you okay?" My first thought was finally, I didn't say that. I want to be clear. I said, "Mom, slow down. I can't understand you." I used my calm voice, the responsible daughter voice I'd been practicing my entire life. But inside? Inside, I set my sandwich down on the passenger seat and I leaned my head back against the headrest and I thought, here it is. Here's the thing I've been waiting for without letting myself admit I was waiting for it. That probably makes me sound like a terrible person. Maybe I am. I've been asking myself that question for about 6 months now, and I still don't have a clean answer. What I do have is this story, and I think I need to tell it. You need to understand the architecture of my family before any of this makes sense. There are two of us, me, Alicia, the older one, and my brother Derek, 4 years younger, born on a Tuesday in October, and from approximately that Tuesday forward, the undisputed center of our family's entire universe. I want to be careful here because I've told this story to friends and therapists, and once, memorably, to a woman I just met at a bachelorette party who asked me, "So are you close with your family?" And then immediately regretted it. And every time I tell it, people wait for the part where my parents locked me in a basement or made me sleep outside or something. There's no part like that. Nobody was cruel to me. Nobody hit me or called me names or told me to my face that I didn't matter. It was so much quieter than that. It was the way my dad lit up when Derek walked into a room genuinely lit up, like a switch flipped, and the way he looked at me, which was warm but just normal. The way you'd look at a neighbor's kid who turned out okay. It was my mom saving Derek's drawings from second grade in a special folder and losing my report cards entirely. It was the 1,001 small moments where they made a choice, usually without even realizing they were making one. And Derek was always on one side of that choice, and I was always on the other. My dad coached Derek's little league team for 6 straight years. Saturdays, practice twice a week sometimes. The whole thing. I ran cross country for 3 seasons in high school. They came to 4 meets. 4 in 3 years. And I'm not even sure 2 of those were intentional. One of them, I think they just happened to drive by the park. I paid for my own college, I took out loans, worked 2 jobs my sophomore and junior years, graduated with $34,000 in debt that I spent the next 8 years paying off. Derek's was fully funded tuition, room and board, textbooks, a monthly allowance for expenses that I later found out was $400 a month, plus a used Honda Civic when he turned 16. I got a birthday card with a $20 bill in it and my mom's handwriting saying, "You're growing up so fast." I'm not keeping score. I mean, I am, obviously. But I want to be clear that the money was never really the point. The money was just the most concrete version of the point. The point was what the money meant. And the thing is, Derek wasn't even a bad kid. That's the part that made it so confusing for so long. He wasn't cruel to me. He wasn't smug about the preferential treatment, at least not in an obvious way. He was just used to it. The way you're used to the sun rising. It didn't occur to him to question it because it had always just been true. The same way gravity is true, the same way water is wet. He had a gift, my mom would say. Derek just has a gift. For what? I used to wonder. For what exactly? The business started about 3 years ago. Derek had an idea for an app, a delivery app, specifically something that connected local independent restaurants with contract drivers, cutting out the big platforms and letting restaurants keep more of their margins. He had a whole pitch. He'd clearly practiced it. He sat at my parents' kitchen table at Easter and laid it out for 45 minutes. And my parents sat across from him like he was presenting to a boardroom. My dad nodding along. My mom refilling his coffee without being asked. I sat there too. I asked a few questions, practical ones, like whether he'd looked into the regulatory side of employing contract drivers in multiple states, whether he'd done a competitor analysis on the half-dozen apps already doing versions of this. Derek had answers. They weren't great answers, but he delivered them with total confidence. And when I pushed a little, my mom changed the subject. Afterward, in the kitchen, she told me I was being negative. "You've always been hard on Derek," she said, rinsing dishes with her back to me. I was 31 years old, standing in my childhood kitchen, and I still didn't have a response to that. I just picked up a dish towel and started drying. A few weeks later, my dad put in $30,000. I heard about it at the 4th of July. My mom mentioned it the way you'd mention a Netflix show you'd been watching. Just tossed it out there. We were so excited about Derek's venture, we decided to invest. I put my burger down. "You invested $30,000 in an app that doesn't exist yet." "It exists," she said a little sharply. "He has a whole team. He's in development." I thought about the down payment conversation. 2 years earlier, I'd found a condo I loved, reasonable price, good neighborhood, the kind of place I'd been saving toward for 4 years. I was short $15,000 and I asked my parents if they could help, even as a loan, even at interest. My dad sat across from me and talked for a long time about how money was tight, how they were trying to be more careful, how he was sure I'd figure it out. I figured it out. I found a different place, farther from work. Smaller, $300 more a month in mortgage because the neighborhood had a higher interest rate. I figured it out. They had $30,000 lying around. I went home early that 4th of July. Told them I wasn't feeling well, which was true in a way that had nothing to do with physical illness. Over the next several months, I watched Derek's social media. He was posting constantly nice restaurants, a weekend in Nashville, photos of him in what appeared to be WeWork spaces in business casual clothing, captions like grinding and building something real. He looked happy. He looked successful. He had a girlfriend who appeared in some of the photos, pretty and smiling, the two of them at rooftop bars and ski resorts, and a Cabo trip that showed up in his stories over New Year's. But when I actually talked to him at family stuff, at my parents' anniversary dinner, and I asked direct questions, he got vague in this very specific way. "We're still in pre-launch. We're pivoting the model slightly based on market feedback. Investors want to see more user acquisition before we go live." Pre-launch, for 18 months. I filed it somewhere in the back of my mind and told myself it wasn't my business. It wasn't my money. About a year and a half in, my dad put in another $15,000. $45,000 total, in a company none of us had ever seen a document for. My mom told me over the phone. I was at work, sitting at my desk, and I had to put the phone on mute for a second because the sound that came out of me was not a sound I wanted to explain. I unmuted. I said, "Has anyone looked at the books? Like, has anyone seen an incorporation document, a bank statement, anything official?" Silence. Alicia. The way she said my name. Flat and tired. Not everyone operates the way you do. Derek thinks bigger than spreadsheets. That's the difference between people who build things and people who just... She stopped herself. "Just what?" I said. I didn't mean it like that. But she had. She absolutely had. People who just work their jobs and pay their bills and ask inconvenient questions and don't have a gift. Not the special kind, not the Derek kind. I said I had to go, and I hung up, and I sat at my desk for about 5 minutes staring at my monitor. My colleague Sarah walked by and asked if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, just tired." I stopped bringing up Derek's company after that. What was the point? But things started shifting around that time in ways I noticed. Derek went quiet on Instagram. The posts slowed, then stopped. The girlfriend stopped appearing. He came to Christmas that year looking like he hadn't slept properly in weeks, thinner, older, a kind of flatness behind his eyes that I hadn't seen before. My dad brought up the app at dinner, proudly, telling my uncle about his son, the entrepreneur. And Derek smiled and said, "We're close. We're almost there," and ate his food and didn't say much else for the rest of the night. I watched him across the table, and I felt something I absolutely was not prepared to feel. I felt sorry for him. Not serves you right sorry. Actually sorry. The kind that sits in your chest heavy and confused because it's mixed up with years of resentment and the memory of that birthday card with $20 in it and 3 years of cross-country meets they missed. All of that was still there. It didn't go anywhere. But underneath it, or next to it, was this genuine sadness for my brother, who looked like a person trying very hard to hold something together that had already come apart. I didn't say anything. I passed the potatoes and talked to my aunt about her garden. January, 8 months ago. My cousin Britt called me on a Sunday afternoon. Britt and I are close. She's one of the few people in my extended family I actually like. And she knows enough of the history to understand context without me having to build a whole foundation every time. She was weird on the phone. Kept starting sentences and not finishing them. "So, I need to tell you something, but I don't know if I should tell you." And then, "Okay, wait. Actually, I think you need to know this." And then, "Have you talked to Derek recently?" I told her to just say it. She had a friend named Marcus. Marcus did contract bookkeeping, small businesses, startups, freelancers. Derek had hired him last spring for a few weeks to help organize company's finances, supposedly to prepare for some investor presentation. Marcus had started with the basics, asked for the incorporation documents, the EIN, bank statements, a cap table if they had one. There was nothing. Not disorganized, nothing. Nothing. No incorporation. No registered business entity in any state. No business bank account. The team Derek had referenced at Easter 2 years ago was 2 friends from college who had contributed exactly $0 and who, Marcus later found out, had stopped answering Derek's messages by month 5. The pitch deck existed. The logo existed. The Squarespace website existed, actually quite nicely designed. That was it. That was the whole company. Marcus had walked away from the contract. He'd told Britt about it months earlier in passing, as a kind of disbelieving story about a client. Britt had sat on it, not sure what to do. And then Derek had stopped posting on Instagram and started looking like a ghost at family gatherings. And she decided I needed to know. I sat on my couch after we hung up, and I didn't move for a while. There was no satisfaction in it. I want to be really clear about that because I think people expect there to be when something you suspected turns out to be true. There wasn't. There was just this hollow, tired feeling, like the confirmation of something terrible that you'd been hoping was wrong. $45,000, my parents' money. My dad's retirement contributions, probably. Gone. And Derek had known for months, had been sitting across from us at Christmas saying, "We're close," knowing. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Derek. I held on to it for 2 months, going to work and coming home and doing my life, carrying this thing that wasn't mine to carry but that had landed on me anyway. The way things always seemed to land on me. The responsible one. The one who figured things out, the one nobody worried about because I was always fine. I was not fine. March, that Trader Joe's parking lot. I was on my lunch break. I had a turkey and avocado sandwich and a bag of kettle chips, and I was listening to a podcast about literally nothing. About someone ranking their favorite pasta shapes because sometimes your brain just needs 30 minutes of nothing. My phone lit up. Mom, I almost didn't answer. I almost let it go to voicemail, listened to it later, handled it the way I handled everything with my family carefully, at a distance, with time to prepare. I answered. She was already crying when the call connected. Not crying that was building towards something already there. Already in the deep end of it. That gasping, ugly cry I described at the beginning. I sat up straight. Mom, what happened? Is Dad okay? Yes, he's here. He's Alicia. Derek came over this morning and She couldn't finish. She tried 3 times. I waited. Derek had come to their house that morning. He'd sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd pitched the app 2.5 years ago, and he'd told them everything. That the company was gone. That it had been gone for almost a year. That he had spent the $45,000 not on development or servers or a team or legal fees, but on his rent, his credit card bills, the Nashville trip, Cabo, the ski weekend, the rooftop bars, the appearance of a life that was running on empty and investor money and shame. He'd been lying to them for 14 months. My dad was in the kitchen. My mom said he wasn't talking, just sitting there. And I could hear it in her voice, this disorientation, this total loss of footing, because my father was a man who always had a response to everything, who always knew what to do, and he was just sitting there. What do we do? My mom kept saying. Alicia, what do we do? How do we fix this? I looked at my sandwich on the passenger seat. I looked at the Trader Joe's storefront. A woman walked out with a cart full of bags and a toddler on her hip, and she was on her own phone, laughing at something, totally unaware that I was sitting 15 feet away watching my family's mythology collapse in real time. My mom was asking me. Me. The one she'd called negative for asking practical questions. The one who didn't think big enough. The one people who just... I thought about the $20 in the birthday card. I thought about my dad's face at the 4th of July when he told me about the $30,000. So confident, so certain that he'd spotted something in Derek I couldn't see, because I was too small-minded to see it. I thought about 3 years of cross-country meets. Mom, I said. My voice was steady. I don't fully know how. I really don't know what to tell you. I've never been the person you came to with the big problems. That was always Derek's role. She cried harder. I don't know if she understood what I meant. I'm not sure I fully understood what I meant in the moment. It just came out. I'll call you later, I said. I love you. Let me think. I hung up. I sat in that parking lot for 20 more minutes. I ate my sandwich. I listened to the end of the pasta podcast. The host concluded that rigatoni was the best shape, and I found myself almost laughing. Not because it was funny, but because something in me needed somewhere to put all that air. Then I went back to work. Derek called me 2 days later. I'd been expecting it and also dreading it. And when his name came up on my phone, I stood in my kitchen for a full 30 seconds before I answered. We hadn't had a real conversation. Not a real one. Not one that wasn't holiday pleasantries in probably 4 years. I'd forgotten the sound of his voice without a performance layered over it. He sounded young on that call. Younger than 30. Exhausted and ashamed and young. I know you probably knew, he said. Or suspected. I had a feeling, I said. Yeah, I should have talked to you. You're the only one who would have actually... He stopped. I don't know. You would have told me the truth. Derek. I sat down at my kitchen table. What happened? Like, really? When did it fall apart? He talked for almost an hour. The real version, not the pitch. The way the 2 friends had bailed early and he hadn't been able to find developers he could actually afford. The way the competitor analysis I'd mentioned at Easter had been, in fact, accurate. There was no real differentiation. Nothing that would make a restaurant choose his platform over the established ones. The way he'd burned through the first $30,000 trying to make something work, and then the shame had just locked him in place. He couldn't tell my parents. He couldn't undo it. So he kept going, kept pretending, kept the Instagram up as long as he could manage, kept telling everyone we're close because close felt better than over. Why didn't you just tell them? I asked. Long pause. Because what was I supposed to say? My whole life they told everyone I was the one with vision. I was the one who was going to do something. I couldn't just... He stopped again. You know what Dad told his whole office? He told his whole office about my company. He printed out the logo and put it on his bulletin board at work. He showed people the website. I hadn't known that. That detail landed somewhere tender. I didn't know how to be what they made me, Derek said. I didn't know how to be the person they needed me to be. So I just kept pretending I was. I sat with that for a minute. I believed him. Completely, unexpectedly, I believed him. And it didn't fix anything. It didn't fix the $45,000 or the $20 birthday card or the 4 cross-country meets or any of it. But it did something to the way I understood the whole picture. Derek wasn't a villain. He wasn't a schemer who'd coldly manipulated our parents for money. He was a person who'd been handed an identity at birth that he couldn't live up to and didn't know how to put down. And when the gap between the identity and the reality got wide enough, he did what scared people do. He hid. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I want to be honest about that. The conversation was real and it mattered, but forgiveness is a process, and I was still in the early stages of it. I told him I appreciated him calling. I told him I was angry not specifically at the app, but at all of it, at the decades of it, at what it meant that our parents had organized our whole family around him while I became the background character in my own childhood. He listened. He didn't argue with it or defend himself. He just said, I know, you're right. That was more than I expected. He's living with a college friend now, in a 2-bedroom in a cheaper part of the city. He got a sales job at some B2B software company. He seems okay, not fixed, not healed, but functional and moving forward in the way that people do when the thing they were dreading finally happens and they find out they can survive it. We text sometimes. It's careful and infrequent and probably always will be. My dad called me about 3 weeks after the Trader Joe's phone call. My mom had told him what I said on that call. I've never been the person you came to with the big problems. And apparently it had sat with him. He asked if we could talk. We talked for a long time. Him in his kitchen, me on my couch, and he said things I had genuinely not expected to hear from him. He said he'd been thinking about a lot of things. He said he hadn't been fair. He said he was sorry. It was a real apology, not a deflection or a qualifier. He said specifically, I treated Derek like the main event and you like, I don't know. I don't have a word for it. But it wasn't right and I've known it for a while and I didn't look at it. I said thank you. I meant it. I also cried after we hung up. Not from gratitude exactly. From grief mostly. Because a real apology from your father when you're 34 is also an acknowledgement that the thing really happened, that you weren't imagining it, that all those years of telling yourself maybe I'm too sensitive or maybe I'm making it into more than it is, you weren't. You were just paying attention. My parents are different with me now. They ask about my work and they listen when I answer. My mom called me last month to tell me she'd recommended me for something a friend of hers needed a consultant, and my mom gave her my name without mentioning Derek at all, without pivoting, just gave her my name and talked about what I was good at. It was such a small thing. It undid me a little. I've been trying to figure out how to end this for a few weeks now because there's no clean ending. That's the thing about real stories. They don't have endings. They have just places where you stop telling them. Here's where I stopped. Derek's rebuilding his life. My parents are different. The $45,000 is gone and it's not coming back. And honestly, it's nobody's problem. But they made the choice and they'll process that grief privately. And I'm gonna let them do that without getting too deep into it. Because that particular financial dynamic is so tangled up in everything else that I can't look at it directly without losing my footing. I didn't get vindication. I want to be really clear about that because I think when people hear a story like this, they expect the ending to feel good, like a balloon releasing pressure, like balance being restored to some universal ledger. It doesn't feel like that. Or it does sometimes. In flashes, there are moments where I feel something sharp and satisfied, and I don't pretend those moments don't exist. But mostly what I feel is tired and kind of sad. Sad for my brother who spent years suffocating under an identity that was never really his. Sad for my parents who loved their kids in the most unequal way possible and didn't see it until something broke. Sad for me. Honestly, for the version of me who just wanted to show her mom her report card, who just wanted someone to drive to one more meet, who just wanted to matter the way Derek mattered, just a little, just enough. That girl didn't get what she needed. The woman she became figured out how to live without it. That's not a triumph exactly. It's just what happened. My dad still has the logo on his bulletin board at work. He told me he took it down after everything came out, and then he put it back up. He said he didn't want to pretend Derek didn't exist just because things went wrong. I thought that was the most human thing he'd ever said to me. I went back to that Trader Joe's a few weeks ago. Same parking spot, more or less. Got the same sandwich. This time I didn't have anywhere to be after, so I just sat there and ate it and watched people come in and out with their groceries, the totally ordinary traffic of a Saturday afternoon, everybody carrying their bags and their lives and their invisible weight. A mom walked out with two kids, a boy and a girl, arguing over something. Who got to push the cart, maybe, or who got the better snack. The mom wasn't paying much attention. She was on her phone, the cart drifting a little, the kids' voices rising. I watched her stop, put the phone in her pocket, look at both of them. I couldn't hear what she said. She crouched down to eye level with them, which you almost never see adults do with kids in parking lots. She said something. Both kids settled. Then she gave the cart handle to the girl. I don't know why that hit me the way it did. It's such a small thing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the girl always got the cart and it wasn't a big deal either way. But I sat there in my car with my sandwich and I felt something loosen in my chest just slightly. Not heal, just loosen. I finished eating. I drove home. That's where the story ends. Edit. I didn't expect this many responses. Thank you for reading. To everyone who said they saw themselves in this, I see you too.